AITA for making a 50-year-old woman cry for not knowing how to use a computer for her job? TLDR, my supervisor told me not to help her on the computer. She asked me how to make a window smaller, and I told her what button and didn't do it for her, so she cried to my supervisor. I am a quality inspector for a factory. I greatly dislike my job, mostly the shift. But I don't want to leave my job, so I told my supervisor, Soups for short, I wanted to go to third shift so I can have some semblance of work-life balance. So she told me the only way I could go to third shift is if I trained somebody new for the position, so I can go to third shift. Told myself I would be the best trainer ever. So the day comes and my trainee arrives. She's a Hispanic woman in her late 50s. And just for context, I am a 28 years old woman. I quickly showed her the ropes and started off slow and making her first day as smooth as possible. She caught on quickly in spite of the language barrier. Things are going so well. I told her I would show her how to do paperwork tomorrow. Well, tomorrow came, and I showed her how to do paperwork. But it was a struggle, because trainee could understand English words that are said, read English words, but writing English words was a learning curve. Okay, so I gave her a notebook so she could write the translated words in Spanish so she could understand. Then we were supposed to put our paperwork into the computer so the higher-ups can see what rejects we had for the day. Then trainee told me that she's never used a computer before. Okay, I showed her the basics of the computer and everything she needed to know. Then I told her to open the audit application. She told me she didn't know how to open the app on the computer. Double-click with the mouse grinning face. She kept clicking and dragging it. I manifested all the patience of a Buddhist monk to train this woman the rest of the week. I literally trained this woman on how to write in English, how to use a computer, on top of how to do her job for a whole week. Trainee would get super frustrated with the computer and tried to ask Soups for another quality job, but Soups told her every quality position in the factory has to use the computer. Trainee straightened up after that and got more serious about learning the computer. That Friday, I decided to do something nice for her and went to the Mexican restaurant that's just around the corner and got her some nachos with steak, chicken, shrimp, fajita style. It cost $30, but I don't know. I just felt like doing it to boost her confidence, and because I wanted to share some good-ass nachos with somebody. Woman shrugging. Monday came, and trainee didn't show up to work. Today, she was there, and the first thing my supervisor told me, knowing that she had some difficulties with the computer, was she wanted to know just how much she learned. So she told me to shadow her and let her do things herself. If she needed help, remind her what to do, but if she gets frustrated, I can do the task for her. But for the most part, just do some shadowing. Okay, cool. Soups turned to her and gave her the same rundown. So work started, and as expected, trainee was doing great with the inspections. Then when she came to the computer, she wanted to make the window smaller since there were multiple windows we needed to see. So she turned to me and asked for help. I told her to just click and drag the window from the top. Trainee clicked a button. I instructed her again to click and drag the window from the top. Take your mouse and click and drag the top of the window. She clicked the same button, then asked me to do it for her. I sighed and said, okay, just press the square button next to the X. She clicked the minimize button. She turned to me and told me that she's never done this before, but I told her no. We went over this twice last week and I just did it for her, then shadowed her for the rest of the order. While the next order was making its way to us, I talked to my friends. The next thing I know, my supervisor was talking to her, and my trainee was in tears crying to Soups. Soups turned to me and asked what happened. I was in shock and I had no idea WTF was going on. Then Soups explained trainee said something about the computer. The first thing I told Soups was she instructed me to not help her with the computer. That's when the trainee said no, that I'm supposed to train her on the computer. But then Soups told her that I'm not a computer teacher and that I was only there to teach her how to do her job. My supervisor turned to me and said clearly there's been some miscommunication and sent me to help in another department and she would take over the rest of the training. I left feeling bad. Maybe I did let out a little bit of frustration, but I didn't yell, didn't raise my voice, and didn't treat her like she was stupid. I literally did what my supervisor told me to do. And the more I think about it, the more frustrated I get. She broke out in tears in front of a bunch of coworkers, went to my supervisor crying, telling her I was mean to her when all that happened was I didn't help her like she wanted me to because of what my supervisor told me. She can do the job because I trained her in every step with patience for an entire week. In fact, My supervisor was barely over there the rest of the day, while the trainee pretty much did her job by herself. It's sad that she felt frustrated and cried, but upon doing that, she pretty much nuked my reputation with my coworkers and my supervisor. I know that's a nice cold thing to say, but I can't help but be frustrated because I literally taught this woman who's twice my age how to use a computer, taught her English, bought her food, and the one moment I don't help her the way she wanted me to, she had a meltdown. But she does have the right to her feelings. Maybe I am being an asshole. Am I? Update. TLDR. HR and supervisor had to sit us both down and talk. The woman actively tried to get me fired, but after I told HR and my supervisor my side, they understood my frustration with her. She got quiet towards the end. So for those who don't know, I'm a quality inspector for a factory and was training a Hispanic woman to do my job while I transitioned to third shift. I trained her for a week and we had a pretty decent relationship as coworkers. I even got her $30 nachos on Friday to award her for a job well done. Getting to that part was difficult to say the least. Training. Trainee was pretty good on inspections, but she didn't know how to write English well. So I got her a notebook so we could translate what to write on the paperwork. She told me she's never used a desktop computer before and was so technologically illiterate she didn't know how to open an application on the computer. She got so frustrated and overwhelmed with the computer on the third day of training that she tried asking my supervisor, Soups for short, for another quality job, but Soups just looked at her and told her every job in the building has some sort of computer that she had to use. Keep in mind I did get frustrated here, but she said she was going to try to look for another job, so I felt my time was wasted. I didn't yell or shout. I just took over the job and did it without her until Soups talked sense into her. Yesterday, Soups told me to shadow her and watch her to see what she knows. That also meant no helping on the computer unless she really needed it. Soups already knew she was having trouble with it and wanted to see herself if trainee could handle things on her own. After Soups left, trainee inspected like a pro, but on the computer she wanted to make the window smaller. Allowing Soups' instructions, one tried to verbally explain what to do, but she kept making the same mistake, so I just did it for her. I went to chat with my friends, and I look around, and she's crying while talking to Soups. I explained to Soups what happened, but Soups decided to separate us and put me in another area. At first, I felt bad, but the more I thought about it, WTF did I do? Well, I found out today. HR. So the situation went around the factory. A lot of my co-workers now know that I made my trainee cry. Yeah, a few of my co-workers thought I got fired after they didn't see me in my usual area and seeing her cry. Yay. Soups pulled me into a conference room with HR and trainee, and the atmosphere was tense. Basically, Soups was telling me that she was disappointed in me. She gave me a directive, but told me I could have handled the situation better. Trainee was putting on her tears, telling them I made her uncomfortable, and she didn't want to work with me anymore. I did my best not to snap and asked what I did wrong. HR said that trainee mentioned I made a face when she asked for help. Are you F-sharp king kidding me? Trainee went on to say she's never had someone treat her like this before, and that I was so rude, blah, blah, blah. I said all this because I made a face once. Trainee said no, that I made this face before last week, and she had to go to Soups, and she didn't want to work anymore that day. That's when I've had it. I cut her off and told HR that was the day she flat out didn't want to work anymore because she got frustrated with the computer. Soups backed me up on that. Then that's when leadership wanted to hear my side. Lucky me. I told them I had to teach this 50-year-old woman how to write in English. Trainee cut me off and said something like, "No, she lie. I understand English." I told them no. I gave her a notebook so she could keep her notes in Spanish for translations. Soups confirmed yes. Trainee still had it. She saw it herself. Then I had to explain not only did I have to teach her to write English, I taught her how to use the computer because she's never used one before, on top of training her for her job. When I said that, Soups and HR's faces went from stern to shocked. Trainee then tried to make it seem like she couldn't ask me any questions, and it was always a problem. I rebutted with, then if our relationship was that bad, why did I buy $30 nachos for you on Friday? This is the same woman I laughed with, got beauty tips from, talked about exes with. But here she was actively trying to paint me out to be a villain, and I worked my ass off to train her and be patient. Ultimately, I apologized if I made her feel that way, but I stood by having every right to be frustrated. Soups and HR finally lightened up and gave me some tips on future trainees, what to do if I get frustrated. Soups even said I might have a resting bee hashtag TCH face and not know it, and that's fair. That's something I can work on. HR told me that apologies can go a long way, then told trainee that it can be frustrating anywhere and suggested maybe she overreacted, but trainee was not having it. She flat out said I was the problem. I already apologized at this point, folks. HR shut her down quick and reminded us both that we all needed to get along. At the end of it, trainee walked out without a word, and Soups told me I didn't have to please everyone, and I didn't have to change myself for anyone. If someone had a problem with you over something and can't let it go, they're the weak one. You know what? She's right. I'm not a saint. I have a resting bitch face, and I get frustrated like anyone else. But fuck trainee, and I hope she enjoyed those $30 nachos. Edit, typo.